An anniversary party. A perfect husband, a perfect life. But for one mother who has done everything to help her daughter, this ideal picture is nothing more than a fragile mask hiding an ugly betrayal. She sees what her daughter doesn't, the lies in every word, the betrayal in every action. And when a woman he considers defenseless decides to play by her own rules, a game begins where not only the truth is at stake, but also her life. My hands, though a little creaky these days, are still good for something. They were meticulously arranging a bouquet of my daughter's favorite hydrangeas and peonies, a vibrant burst of fuchsia and lavender for her anniversary dinner. It was their 10th, and I was so proud. So proud of my little Annie, who had grown up to be such a beautiful and kind woman. And so proud of Mark, who had seemingly made her so happy. I smiled to myself, thinking of the quiet joy of seeing your children build their own perfect lives. It's a simple pleasure, isn't it? Just seeing them happy, thriving, knowing you did your job well. The late afternoon sun filtered through the kitchen window of their magnificent, sprawling home in Aspen, turning the dust motes into dancing fairies and warming my face. It was the least I could do, really, after Annie had been so swamped with her new design firm that she'd barely had time to breathe, let alone plan for this special day. I hummed an old tune, a classic from my own youth, and carefully tied the ribbon around the bouquet's stems, a gesture as familiar as breathing. My daughter-in-law, a lovely and intelligent woman named Grace, had invited me up for a week to help with some last-minute preparations for the party, and it felt good to be useful. I knew how much she appreciated my help, how she saw me not as some frail old woman, but as a seasoned veteran of domesticity. And I was, of course. I had raised 3 children on my own after my late husband passed, and I had a PhD in resilience. Just as I was about to place the finished bouquet in its vase, my phone buzzed with an alert. A new email from Mark. He rarely emailed me directly, so I was a little curious. I clicked on it, half expecting a thank you note or a quick update on his flight home from his supposed business trip. What I saw wasn't a thank you. It was a picture of him and some woman, a blonde with a laugh that looked practiced and insincere, smiling brightly on a yacht in the Caribbean. The subject line read, "Missing you already." My hands trembled, and the vase of perfect hydrangeas slipped from my grasp. The porcelain shattered against the marble floor with a sickening, final sound. The flowers, moments before, so beautiful and proud, were now a mess of broken petals and spilled water. The sight was a reflection of the sudden, devastating crack that had just appeared in my carefully constructed world. My first thought was that it must be a mistake. A work colleague? A family friend? But the easy intimacy in their posture, the way her hand rested so naturally on his arm, it was more than a mistake. It was a betrayal, cold and undeniable. And it was happening to my daughter, my sweet, trusting Annie. The anger, hot and sharp, flashed through me. This wasn't just a simple affair. It was a slap in the face to everything I had taught my daughter about respect and commitment. My jaw tightened. I felt the familiar burn of fury, the kind that only a mother can feel when her child is hurt. And then Mark's voice, as if from a different planet, echoed from the living room. "Hey, Grace, you won't believe who I just ran into at the airport." My heart hammered against my ribs. He was here, he was home early, and he was lying. I wiped the water from my hands, trying to think, to process this new, terrible information. My mind raced, but my body felt like it was moving through molasses. I looked down at the mess of flowers and glass on the floor, a grim metaphor for their marriage, and a wave of pure, cold sarcasm washed over me. Oh, this was rich. This was so rich. The door swung open, and there he stood, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, a charming, practiced smile on his face. He didn't notice the broken vase or the wet mess on the floor. He was too busy looking at his phone, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips. "Annie is going to be so surprised," he said, not even looking at me. I wanted to give her a little shock. My throat felt tight, and my voice, when it came out, was strained. Oh, I'm sure she will be, Mark. I'm absolutely sure. He finally looked up, his smile faltering as he saw the shattered mess at my feet. What happened here? He demanded, his voice now a little colder. An accident, I said, meeting his gaze. Just a little mishap. You know how it is when things get a little messy? He squinted, as if trying to read a deeper meaning in my words. And in that moment, I knew. I knew that he hadn't just made a mistake. He had made a choice. And he was about to learn that you don't mess with a mama bear, not when her cub is in danger. And you know, as I stood there in this beautiful, opulent kitchen, feeling so small and yet so fiercely protective, it occurred to me that there are so many stories like mine out there. So many women who have seen injustice up close and personal and who decided to do something about it. So if you're out there listening and you want to hear how this all plays out, how a seemingly ordinary woman with a few good years left in her can fight back against a scoundrel who thinks he's untouchable, then do me a favor. Just hit that little button. You'll be glad you did. And as Mark's eyes finally drifted to the phone clutched in my hand, I saw the exact moment that a flicker of concern turned into a cold, hard dread. This was only the beginning. The smile Mark had worn upon entering the house had completely vanished, replaced by a confused frown as his eyes darted from the shattered vase to my face, then to the phone I was still holding. The look in his eyes was one of pure, unadulterated annoyance, not concern for me, not surprise at the broken vase, but simple, cold irritation that something was out of place. This was his sanctuary, his perfect, immaculate showpiece of a home, and I had just made a mess of it. That's all it was to him, a mess. "What on earth happened?" he asked. Not with genuine curiosity, but with a clipped, demanding tone, as if I were a clumsy maid who had just ruined his day. He took a step toward me, and a scent of cheap, unfamiliar perfume wafted off his clothes, a stark contrast to the fresh scent of my peonies. My blood ran cold, a new wave of disgust washing over me. He had just stepped off a plane from a tropical paradise reeking of another woman, and now he was scolding me for a broken vase in a house that I had, for all intents and purposes, helped pay for. The injustice of it all was so profound it almost made me laugh. I looked him dead in the eye, and a smile, a very thin, very practiced smile, touched my lips. "Oh, an accident," I said, my voice as calm as a placid lake on a windless day. "I was so excited to see you home early, I was just a little distracted." I let the last word hang in the air between us, a little jab, a little hint that maybe I knew more than he thought. His gaze flickered to my phone, and I saw a flash of panic, so fleeting and quick I almost missed it. He was worried, but not about me. He was worried about what I had seen. I held the phone up, a subtle, almost theatrical gesture. "Oh, this?" I said, with a feigned casualness that I didn't feel. "Just a new update on the Neighborhood Watch app. Seems there was a bit of a commotion down the street. Always something, isn't there? It's a good thing I pay attention to these things." I lied so smoothly, so easily, I almost believed it myself. I slid the phone into my pocket. The image of him and the blonde burned into my mind like a brand. It was a lie of convenience, a tactical retreat to see what he would do. His face relaxed, just a fraction, the tension in his shoulders releasing. "Right," he said, nodding, then his eyes flicked back to the floor. "Well, try to be more careful, please. This is Italian marble. It's not cheap." "Oh, I know," I replied, and the sarcasm in my voice was so thick I could have spread it on toast. "I have a lot of expensive tastes, too. You just wouldn't know it looking at me, would you?" He didn't pick up on the sarcasm. Of course he didn't. He never had. He was so wrapped up in his own little world, in his own little web of lies, he couldn't see anything beyond his own polished reflection. He was a man who lived in a golden cage of his own making, and he was so convinced of its beauty that he didn't even notice the bars. He bent down, picking up one of the broken porcelain shards. "I'll get Grace to call someone to fix this. You don't worry about it." "Oh, I'm not worried," I said, my voice still light and airy. "I'm not worried at all. It was just a vase. It's the little things, that really count. The flowers, they were for her, for your anniversary. I watched his face for a reaction, for a flicker of shame, a hint of guilt. There was nothing, just a blank, handsome mask. The man had no conscience. He was a void, a polished, empty shell with a pretty smile and a bank account. I began to sweep up the broken glass and petals, a quiet, almost meditative act. Mark stood there for a moment watching me, as if he expected me to explain myself, to apologize for the mess. But I just kept sweeping, my movements slow and deliberate. He finally turned and walked into the living room, probably to make a call, to continue the farce. And I stood there alone, in the wreckage of a bouquet and a decade-long marriage, and for the first time in years, I felt a familiar cold determination settle over me. I wasn't a fragile, distracted old woman. I was a force, a quiet force, a silent storm. I finished sweeping up the glass and walked over to the trash can, my mind already racing with possibilities. The sight of that photo, the nonchalant lie, his casual disrespect, it had ignited something inside me, a fire that I hadn't felt since I was raising my kids on my own. Mark thought he was a player in this game of life, but he was about to find out that I was the one who had written the rule book. He was about to learn that you don't get away with treating people like they're nothing, not on my watch. He thought he had all the power, all the control, all the cards, but he was about to be dealt a hand he never saw coming. He thought he was the one who was in control. What he didn't realize was that he had just lit a fuse and that the dynamite was already in the house. The next morning, the aspen sun rose with a kind of blinding innocence that felt entirely out of place. It streamed through the oversized windows of my daughter's guest room, illuminating every perfect detail. The plush velvet chairs, the pristine white linens, the antique nightstand that cost more than my first car. It was all a carefully curated lie, just like Mark. Just like the perfect marriage I had believed in for 10 years. I lay there for a long time, watching the dust motes dance in the light, feeling utterly exhausted, as if I had just run a marathon. The adrenaline from yesterday's discovery had faded, leaving behind a cold, hard knot of fury in my stomach. I was no longer just a spectator. I was a reluctant detective, a single-woman investigative unit trying to piece together a puzzle that I had no desire to solve. I got up and went to the kitchen, the shattered vase and the pile of broken glass from the night before a distant memory, scrubbed clean by some unseen hand. The marble countertop gleamed, reflecting the cold, hard reality of the situation. There was no evidence, no proof. Just a nagging image seared into my brain. The image of that woman, her laugh, her hand on his arm, and his smile, so different from the one he saved for my daughter. It was the smile of a man who was getting away with something, a smile full of private, cruel jokes. I found Mark in the kitchen, already on a conference call. He was impeccably dressed in the casual polo shirt and slacks, looking every bit the successful, charming husband. He held a phone to his ear, his voice low and professional, but his eyes were constantly darting towards me, a subtle nervousness in them that I had never seen before. He was a different man this morning. The polished facade had a new, barely perceptible crack in it. He was a fraud, and he knew that I, the old woman who had just dropped a vase, had seen something. He ended his call and looked at me, a polite but distant smile on his face. "Morning, Carol," he said, using my first name as if we were professional colleagues. "Sleep well?" "Like a log. Dreams of sunshine and yachting. It was marvelous." I watched his face for a reaction. His eyes narrowed slightly, a question forming there, but he chose to ignore it. He was a coward, too afraid to ask the question on his mind. Annie bustled into the kitchen at that moment, her face aglow. "Mom, Mark, you two are up early." She gave Mark a quick peck on the cheek, and he flinched, a small, almost imperceptible movement that I alone caught. A man who was used to a different kind of affection, I thought to myself. A man who was used to a different kind of touch.
My heart ached for my daughter, who was so blissfully ignorant, so completely unaware of the poison seeping into her perfect little world. "Mom, you look tired," Annie said, her brow furrowed with concern. "Did you not sleep well? The bed is comfortable, isn't it?" "Oh, the bed is fine, honey," I said, a forced smile on my face. "I just have a lot on my mind, that's all. Old age, you know. I was up thinking about everything, my garden, the bills, the garden club, all the little things that keep a woman up at night." I was lying through my teeth, but my daughter was too kind, too trusting to see through it. Mark, however, was not so trusting. He was watching me like a hawk, his eyes never leaving my face. He was trying to figure out if I was just a senile old woman or if I was something much, much more dangerous. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, trying to calculate the risk I posed. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen island, watching them. Annie was telling me about the details of her new business deal, her face lit up with excitement. Mark was pretending to listen, nodding and smiling in all the right places, but I could see his mind was elsewhere. He was a walking lie, a monument to deception, and my beautiful, smart daughter was completely blind to it. Then a new detail presented itself. As Mark was pouring his own coffee, I noticed a faint, almost invisible mark on his collar, a slight smudge of what looked like bright pink lipstick. It was not a color Annie wore. My stomach tightened, a new wave of disgust washing over me. He wasn't even trying to hide it. Or maybe he just did not care. Maybe he was so arrogant, so convinced of his own untouchable power, that he did not even bother to be careful. "What is that on your collar, Mark?" I asked, my voice calm, almost innocent. He froze, coffee pot in hand. He looked down at his collar, and I watched the color drain from his face, a slow, agonizing slide from pale to white. He quickly brushed at it, but the stain, faint as it was now forever etched into my memory. "Nothing," he said, his voice a little too quick, a little too loud. "Just coffee, a little spill from this morning. I'll change before I leave." "Oh, right," I said, taking a cup of coffee. "Of course, coffee. It's a very specific kind of coffee, isn't it?" I was baiting him, and he knew it. He glared at me, his handsome face now twisted into a mask of pure hatred. He knew that I knew. He did not know how much I knew, but he knew I was on to him, and that was enough. The tension in the room was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. Annie, of course, noticed nothing. She was still humming about her new business deal, about her brilliant husband, about her perfect life. But the perfect life she thought she had was nothing but a mirage. And I, the woman who was just visiting to help with the flowers, was about to become the one who shattered the whole illusion. I was just getting started. He had no idea what was coming for him, and every minute he stayed in this house, every lie he told was just another nail in his own coffin.
After the strained breakfast, the tension in the house was so thick you could almost taste it. Annie, bless her innocent heart, went off to her office with a cheerful, "See you both at lunch," completely oblivious to the silent war being waged in her own home. Mark and I were left alone, two predators circling each other. He went to his study, and I returned to my work on the party preparations, but the comb was a lie. I could feel his eyes on me, even through the walls. He was like a shark, circling, waiting for the right moment to strike. He was not a fool. He knew that I knew. And he could not afford to have a loose end like me running around his perfectly ordered life. I was in the kitchen, carefully frosting a 2-layer cake for the anniversary dinner, my mind racing a mile a minute. I was no detective, but I had raised 3 children. That meant I had a doctorate in subtle manipulation and silent information gathering. I knew how to read a person's face, how to listen to the spaces between their words. And right now, all of Mark's nonverbal cues were screaming. The way he avoided my gaze, the way his jaw was clenched, the way he kept his phone closer to his body than he kept his own wife. He was a walking billboard of guilt.
Just as I was about to pipe some intricate frosting flowers onto the cake, I heard the faint click of a door. Mark was standing in the doorway of his study, watching me. His face was a placid mask of professionalism, but his eyes were hard. He walked into the kitchen, his posture a little too confident, a little too casual. "You know, Carol," he said, his voice as smooth as silk, "I have been thinking, perhaps you are a little overwhelmed with all of this, all the planning, the travel. It is a lot for one person to handle." I stopped piping and looked at him, one eyebrow raised. "Oh, I am not overwhelmed, Mark. I'm quite good at handling things. Always have been. My whole life has been a master class in handling things." He gave a condescending little laugh. "Of course, I did not mean to imply anything. It is just that you have seemed a little on edge. You know, with the vase this morning and all. We all have those moments." This was it. He was trying to plant the seed of doubt in my mind, trying to make me feel small, old, and crazy. He was using a classic tactic, one I had seen 1,000 times. He was trying to gaslight me, to make me question my own sanity. He was a professional, but I was the one who had invented the game. "On edge?" I said, my voice sweet as the frosting in my hand. "Oh, no, dear, I am as calm as can be. The vase was an accident. And you know, accidents happen to everyone, even to those who are supposed to be perfect." I let my eyes linger on his collar for just a moment longer than was comfortable. He saw it, and he flinched just a little, a quick tremor of fear that told me everything I needed to know. He changed the subject immediately. "Well, I am sure the cake will be lovely. You are so good at these things." He was trying to flatter me, to disarm me. He was a snake, and his words were honey. "Thank you, Mark," I said, a genuine smile now on my face, but it was a cold one. "I appreciate the compliment. You know, I have always believed in putting my heart and soul into everything I do. People can always tell when you do not, when something is fake. It is a very ugly thing to be fake." His smile faltered, and he looked away. The silent conversation between us was a deafening roar. We were not talking about cakes anymore. We were talking about a life built on a foundation of lies. He knew it, and I knew that I knew it. He walked over to the coffee maker and began to fiddle with the machine, his back to me. His body language was a tell. He was rattled, and that was when I saw it. A piece of paper, half hidden under a stack of magazines on the counter. It was a receipt from a flower shop. Not my flowers, not the ones I had arranged, but from a different one. It was dated yesterday, and the purchase was for a single red rose. A single red rose, a cliché, a tired old symbol of romance. My heart sank, a new wave of sadness washing over me. This was not just a one-time thing. This was a pattern, a cruel, deliberate, and calculated deception. Mark turned around, a forced smile on his face again. He walked out of the room, and I was left alone with the cake, the silent accusations, and the damning evidence of a single red rose. My mind was made up. I was no longer a detective. I was a general, and I was about to go to war. He was about to find out that the best revenge is a life lived well, and a public shaming that no amount of money can fix. The battle lines had been drawn, and the first shot was about to be fired. What was he so afraid of? Me, an old woman who knew a little something about getting things done. And he was about to find out that my quiet determination was more dangerous than all his lives combined. The next move I made would determine everything, and he was completely blind to the trap I was laying. He was about to step right into it, and there was no turning back.
Mark returned from his run a little over an hour later, his face flushed with something more than just physical exertion. There was a hard, calculating look in his eyes now, the sort of look a man gets when he knows he is in trouble and is already planning his escape. He no longer saw me as a harmless, frail old woman. I was a problem, a variable in his carefully constructed equation, and he was already trying to find a way to eliminate me. The air in the house was thick with unspoken threats. I knew he was thinking about how to handle me. What he did not know was that I had already moved on to the next phase of my own plan. I was in the living room, polishing some old family photos of Annie, which I had brought to put on display for the anniversary party. I was meticulously wiping the dust from the glass frames, a ritual that seemed to ground me. It gave me a chance to think, to organize my thoughts and prepare for the next round. He walked past me without a word, his silence a deliberate act of contempt. He was trying to make me feel invisible, to pretend that the conversation about the lipstick and the vague accusations of being on edge had never happened. I simply kept polishing, a small knowing smile on my face. He went into the kitchen and I heard him on the phone, his voice low and hushed. I could not make out the words, but the tone was all I needed to hear. He was talking to the other woman. He was a fool, a man so arrogant that he would take a phone call from his mistress in his own home, with his mother-in-law just a few feet away. My disgust was a physical thing, a cold wave that washed over me. He was so completely devoid of a conscience, so certain of his own power that he felt invincible. That was his greatest weakness, and I knew exactly how to exploit it. I placed a few of the framed photos on the coffee table, arranging them just so. They were a timeline of Annie's life, a baby in a tiny sun hat, a freckled teenager with a wide, gappy smile, a radiant bride on her wedding day. The sight of her happy, innocent face filled me with a fresh surge of resolve. This was not just about me or about him. This was about my daughter's life. It was about exposing a lie before it completely devoured her. Mark came back into the living room, his face a little paler now. He saw the photos on the table and stopped, a flicker of something, was it fear, in his eyes. "What are these for?" he asked, his voice now a little too sharp. "For the party, of course. A little walk down memory lane. I thought it would be nice for everyone to see how far she has come." He picked up a photo of Annie from her wedding day, his fingers tightening on the frame. He looked at it for a long moment, a conflicted expression on his face. It was in that moment I saw it, a brief, fleeting glimpse of the man he might have been, the man my daughter thought he was. But it was gone just as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by a cold, blank stare. "Maybe we do not need these," he said, setting the photo down with a little too much force. "It's a party, not a historical exhibit. It's a little gaudy." My heart pounded with fury. He was not talking about the photos. He was talking about Annie. He was talking about the life they had built together, the one he was so intent on destroying. I stood up, my back straight, my chin held high. "Gaudy?" I said, my voice dangerously low. "Mark, these are memories. These are pieces of my daughter's life. They are beautiful. They are real, unlike some things." He glared at me, his eyes now full of an open, simmering hatred. "He think you should leave them in the box," he said, his voice a quiet command. He was no longer trying to pretend. He was trying to assert dominance. He was trying to make me back down. But I had not raised 3 children on my own to back down to a man who looked good in a polo shirt. "I will not," I said, my voice calm but firm. "They are staying right here. It is Annie's anniversary, and she deserves to be celebrated. All of her life, not just the parts that are convenient for you." He took a step towards me, and for the first time I felt a tremor of fear. But I held my ground. I was a mother, and my daughter's happiness was at stake. He would have to go through me to get to her. He would have to go through a woman who was armed with nothing but a quiet determination and a lifetime of experience. He was a bully,
a coward, a man who preyed on the kindness and trust of others. And bullies, I knew from my long years of life, only understand one language, the language of strength. He took a step back, a flash of something in his eyes, a kind of disbelief. He was not used to being challenged. He was used to being in control. He walked away, but I knew he would be back. I knew he was already planning his next move, a move that would be more direct, more calculated. He was not just a threat to my daughter's marriage now. He was a threat to me. He was about to find out what it means to go to war with a mother. And he was about to learn that the quiet ones are always the most dangerous. My phone buzzed with an incoming text from my daughter. "Having a great day with Mark today. He's been so sweet since he got back." My heart twisted. "Oh, honey," I thought to myself, "you have no idea what sweet is. But you are about to. And I, your loving mother, will be the one to show you." He thought he could hide his secrets in the dark, but I was about to turn on the lights. He was about to be exposed, and there was nothing he could do about it.
The rest of the day was a silent, suffocating chess match. Mark and I moved around the house, exchanging forced pleasantries in front of Annie, but our eyes held a different conversation entirely, one of suspicion, of threat, of mounting hatred. He was a master of his craft, pretending to be the doting husband, the perfect son-in-law, while his every move was a calculated effort to undermine me. He would casually bring up my forgetfulness to Annie, laughing it off as if it were a charming quirk. "Your mom said she was so tired this morning," he would say, his voice full of feigned concern. "I told her to take a nap. She's working too hard for this party." He was trying to plant the idea that I was frail, that my mind was not as sharp as it used to be. But Annie, with her loving nature, just brushed it off. "Oh, Mom is a powerhouse. She has more energy than all of us combined." But the seed had been planted, and as the day wore on, he became more and more brazen. When Annie went to her home office for a meeting, he cornered me in the living room. "I do not know what you think you saw, Carol," he said, his voice dropping to a low, menacing whisper. "But I think you are confused. You are a little old-fashioned. You grew up in a different time. My colleagues and I, we are very close. It is a modern workplace. It is not what you think." I looked at him, and a genuine, humorless laugh escaped my lips. "Oh, Mark," I said, shaking my head, "it is always the same tired old story. A man cheats, and then he blames the woman for seeing it. It is not old-fashioned, dear. It is just common decency, a quality you seem to lack." His face went white with fury, and he took a step towards me, a dangerous glint in his eye. "You are just an old busybody, a lonely, bitter woman trying to ruin a happy marriage because your own life is so pathetic." That was it. That was the line. I had been called a lot of things in my life, but never pathetic. My life had been difficult, yes, but it was a life of strength, of raising a family on my own, of creating something beautiful out of nothing. I was not pathetic. He was. "Mark," I said, my voice low and steady, "do not ever for 1 second think you know anything about me or my life. My life is full of love. My children are happy, successful, and kind, and they did not get that way by being pathetic. They got that way by being raised by a woman who taught them what decency and loyalty mean. And you, my dear boy, know nothing about either of those things." He stood there, frozen, completely taken aback by my venom.
He had expected me to crumble, to cry, to run back to my room in shame. But I was not that woman. I was a fighter, and he was about to find out exactly what kind of fight he had just picked. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I saw his face shift from pure hatred to a panicked, nervous energy. It was a text. He quickly put the phone away, but not before I caught a glimpse of the name on the screen. Jessica. The same name I had seen on that old email, and below it, a message. Did you send the package? I am waiting. A package. What package? My mind raced, trying to connect the dots. A package meant something tangible, something that could be used as evidence. It was not just a fleeting infidelity, it was a physical, tangible betrayal. A package was a weapon, and now I knew it existed. My eyes must have given something away, because he glanced at me again, his face a mask of suspicion. I need to go, he said abruptly, his voice a little shaky. I have a work thing. I will be back for dinner. He turned and left, a man on the run, leaving me alone with my thoughts, my resolve, and a powerful new piece of information. A package was being sent, and it was going to that woman, Jessica. As I stood there, I felt a familiar cold determination settle over me. He had just made his biggest mistake yet. He had underestimated me, and he had given me a new trail to follow. He thought he was in the clear, but he was about to find out that I was not just an old woman who dropped a vase. I was the one who was about to deliver a much more shocking package of my own. He was a fool, and fools, I knew from experience, never see the trap they're walking into until it's too late. My next move would be the one that turned his whole world upside down. He had no idea what was coming.
The moment Mark's luxury sedan pulled out of the driveway, I felt a kind of cold, quiet calm settle over me. The passive stage of this war was over. The game of subtle hints and silent accusations was finished. He had made his move, he had shown his hand, and now it was my turn. I was no longer just a spectator to my daughter's impending heartbreak. I was the one who was going to prevent it. I was no longer a detective. I was a general, and I had my first mission. I had to find out what was in that package and what Jessica was waiting for. A package was a tangible betrayal, a smoking gun, and I knew exactly where to start my search. I went straight to his study. The room was a monument to his ego, all dark wood, leather, and polished chrome. His laptop was closed on his desk, and my hands, which had trembled just yesterday when they were holding a bouquet, were now steady and determined. I knew his password. He had told Annie once, in a moment of playful exasperation, that it was a combination of their anniversary date and his lucky number. A pathetic little act of romanticism, a breadcrumb of his supposed love, that I was now going to use to dismantle his life. I typed in the password, my fingers moving with a speed I did not know I had. The computer unlocked, and I felt the small, triumphant surge of adrenaline. I went straight to his emails, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. I found the messages I was looking for almost immediately. A series of correspondence with a shipping company. The sender was Mark. The recipient was Jessica, and the contents were listed as personal effects. The tracking number was a long, convoluted string of letters and numbers. It was not much, but it was a start. I copied the tracking number, and then, on a whim, I went to his text messages. The messages were a nauseating mix of professional updates and private conversations. And there they were, a conversation between him and a contact simply labeled Jessica.
The messages were short, direct, and intimate. Nothing explicit, nothing that would hold up in a court of law, but enough to turn my stomach. Then I saw a new thread, a different conversation with a new contact. The name was simply The Cleaner. The messages were brief, but their meaning was brutally clear. Mark, I think she knows. Cleaner. The old woman? Mark, yes, she's getting in the way. I need you to do your job. Make it look like an accident. My breath hitched in my throat. My hands trembled not with fear, but with a cold, righteous rage. He was not just cheating on my daughter. He was plotting to hurt me. He was a monster, a black hole of a man, devoid of any humanity. I looked at the name The Cleaner and the messages below it, and a new wave of realization washed over me. He wasn't just planning to deal with me. He was planning to deal with the whole situation, with any loose end that could expose him, and I was at the top of his list. I took a picture of the messages, a permanent record of his monstrous intentions. Then I went to his browsing history. He was a creature of habit, and his habits were disgusting. I found a search for the shipping company's website. I copied the URL and closed the laptop, wiping the fingerprints from the screen. I was a professional now, a quiet ghost in his perfect house. As I walked out of the study, I heard the front door open. He was back. My heart hammered in my chest and I felt a cold dread in my stomach. He had not gone for a run. He had gone to meet with Jessica, to plan his next move, to discuss the package, and to confirm his plan to hurt me. I was just moments too late. I walked into the kitchen, my face a mask of casual indifference. He was standing there, his eyes scanning the room, as if looking for any sign of my presence, of my intrusion. He looked at me, his face a little too innocent, a little too calm. "Rough day at the office?" I asked, in a hint of sarcasm. He just grunted in reply, and I knew then that I was not just a threat to him anymore. I was an enemy. He saw me as a woman who was in the way, a problem to be solved, a life to be ended. But he had made a terrible mistake. He had given me a new purpose, a new reason to fight. He was about to find out that a mother's love is a far more powerful and dangerous force than a man's greed. He thought he was a mastermind, a puppeteer pulling the strings of everyone's lives. But I was not a puppet. I was a wrecking ball, and I was about to swing. The information I had just found was a new and a powerful weapon. And he had no idea what I was about to do with it. The stakes were no longer just about a marriage. They were about my life. And I was not about to go down without a fight. He had no idea what was coming.
I stood in the silence of Mark's study, the screenshot of his text seared into my mind. The world, a moment ago so placid and normal, was now a place of cold, calculated danger. I was no longer just dealing with a cheating husband. I was dealing with a man who was willing to orchestrate an accident. A man who saw me, his wife's mother, as a problem to be solved, a life to be ended. My fear, surprisingly, was not for myself. It was for my daughter, for the life she had unknowingly built with a sociopath. And a cold, terrifying calm settled over me. He was about to find out that you do not threaten a mother and expect to live happily ever after. I was no longer a general. I was a wrecking ball, and I was about to swing. I walked out of the study and went to my room, my mind racing a mile a minute. I needed a plan, a quiet, surgical strike that would expose him without putting anyone else in harm's way. I looked at the anniversary dinner preparations, at the beautiful cake I had made, at the elegant table set with silver and crystal. This was the perfect stage. It was a place of celebration, of love, of family. It was where the lie was the most beautiful
and where its exposure would be the most devastating. First, I needed to make sure I was not alone. I had an old friend in town, a retired police detective named Eleanor. She was a no-nonsense woman with a nose for trouble and a quiet loyalty that was fiercer than a junkyard dog. I called her, my voice low and steady, and gave her the address and the time of the dinner. I did not give her all the details, just a warning, a sense of foreboding. "Ellie," I said, "I have a bad feeling about tonight. Mark's acting strange. If anything happens to me, you go straight to my daughter's office, open the top right drawer of my desk, and you'll find a flash drive. It's for you, and only for you." Eleanor, bless her heart, simply said, "Got it. I will be on standby." She did not ask questions. She knew me too well. Next, I needed to confirm the package. I used my phone to go to the shipping website and entered the tracking number. The package was scheduled to arrive at Jessica's address tomorrow morning. The contents? A small, ornate jewelry box. My heart sunk. It was not just an affair. It was a commitment. He was buying her gifts, and he was doing it with my daughter's money in my daughter's home in the middle of a celebration of their anniversary. The audacity was breathtaking. The rest of the afternoon was a blur of calculated moves. I put on my most elegant black dress, the one I had saved for a special occasion. I did my hair and my makeup with meticulous care. I was not just getting ready for a dinner, I was preparing for a war. I was going to face him not as a victim, but as a queen. A woman of power and dignity who was about to dismantle his entire life. Mark came back into the house just as the sun was setting, his face a mask of forced cheerfulness. He was a master of his craft, a brilliant actor. He was charming, he was witty, he was everything a loving husband should be. He had no idea that I, his quiet, unassuming mother-in-law, was holding the script for the third act, and that his character was about to be completely and utterly destroyed. When Annie came out, she looked radiant. She was wearing a beautiful dress, and her face was lit up with a pure, unadulterated happiness that was a dagger in my heart. She kissed Mark, and he kissed her back. A perfect picture of a perfect life. I stood back, a silent observer, watching the final minutes of their beautiful lie. The guests began to arrive, a parade of smiling faces, all friends and family who believed in the perfect facade of Mark and Annie's marriage. The room filled with laughter and cheerful chatter, a beautiful, innocent noise that was about to be shattered. I stood by the fireplace, a glass of water in my hand, my heart a steady, silent drum. The time had come. I saw Mark across the room, talking to one of his business partners, his face a mask of effortless confidence. He was smiling, laughing, a man without a care in the world. He was so sure of himself, so certain that he had won, but he had no idea what was about to happen. He had no idea that his world was about to come crashing down. He had no idea that I had just given Eleanor the final clue. He was about to learn that you do not threaten a mother and expect to live happily ever after. His beautiful golden cage was about to be torn down, and I, the quiet little bird he so carelessly threatened, was about to sing a song of pure, unadulterated vengeance. The final moments had arrived, and there was no turning back. What happens when a man tries to bury a secret so deep that he believes it is untouchable? He is about to discover that a woman, with nothing but a quiet determination, can dig it right back up and expose it to the world. And you will not want to miss the moment it all comes to a head.
The dinner party was in full swing, a symphony of polite laughter and clinking crystal. The room was bathed in the soft glow of candlelight, and my daughter, Annie, was a vision in a silk gown, her face a beacon of pure, unadulterated happiness. Mark, at her side, was the picture of a devoted husband, his charming smile on full display as he regaled his business associates with stories of his recent trip. The whole scene was so sickeningly perfect, so meticulously crafted, that I felt a cold, righteous fury course through my veins. It was a golden cage, and the time had come to set the bird free. I waited for the perfect moment, the calm before the storm. It came right after the toast. Mark raised his glass, his eyes fixed on Annie, and delivered a speech so full of lies, so dripping with false affection, that it almost made me gag. "To my beautiful wife," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "10 years of pure bliss. You are the light of my life, my rock, my everything." The guests applauded, and Annie, tears in her eyes, squeezed his hand. It was the most perfect, most grotesque moment of his life, and I was about to shatter it into a million little pieces. I waited until the applause died down, until the room was quiet again, and then I stood, every eye turned to me, a silent, curious audience. I felt the weight of their gaze, the sudden hushed stillness. Mark's smile faltered, a flash of cold dread in his eyes. He knew. He had a premonition of what was to come, a cold feeling of impending doom. "Thank you, Mark, for that beautiful toast. It really is a testament to the power of imagination." I let the word hang in the air, a tiny poison dart. "You know, for the past 2 days, I have been working on a little something of my own, a surprise, to commemorate this special occasion. I have prepared a little presentation for all of you. It is a walk down memory lane, a tribute to a decade of true love, and I think it is time for us to see it." Mark's face went white. He opened his mouth to protest, but I was already walking towards the large television screen on the wall. He stood up, a furious, silent question in his eyes. But there was nothing he could do. I had control of the remote, and I had already loaded the flash drive. The guests watched, their faces a mixture of shock and curiosity. "Mom, what are you doing?" Annie asked, her voice a little strained. "Just a little surprise, honey. A little something to celebrate the truth." I pressed a button on the remote, and the screen came to life. The first image was not a photo of their life together. It was a split screen. On one side was the photo from Mark's email, the one of him and the blonde, Jessica, on the yacht in the Caribbean. On the other was a tracking map from the shipping company, a little dot on the screen showing the location of a personal effects package headed to a home in the Bahamas. My mind raced, but my heart was calm. I had just launched the missile. The room erupted in a collective gasp. A stunned silence descended upon the party, a silence so thick and heavy it was suffocating. Mark stood there, frozen, his face a mask of utter horror. Annie's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes fixed on the screen, a look of pure, agonizing betrayal on her face. "What is this?" Mark's father, a quiet, reserved man, asked, his voice shaking with disbelief. "This," I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a sharp knife, "is the truth. It is the story of my son-in-law's business trip. It is the story of a man who builds his life on a foundation of lies. This is the truth about the package he has sent to his mistress in the Bahamas." Mark found his voice. He bellowed, "This is a lie. This is a setup. You're insane, Carol. You are a bitter old woman who has gone crazy." I looked at him, and for the first time, I felt no fear, only a quiet, unwavering pity. "Am I?" I asked, and I pressed the remote again, The screen changed to the screenshot of his texts with the cleaner, the one about me, the one where he plotted to make my life look like an accident. The room was in chaos. The guests were murmuring, their faces a mixture of shock and disgust. Annie looked at the screen, and then she looked at me, a silent question in her eyes. "Mom, is this real?" "It is, honey," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "It is every single bit of it real." Mark lunged at me, his eyes filled with a murderous rage. But before he could reach me, Mark's father, a man that I had always thought of as a soft-spoken pushover, stepped in front of me, his body straight and tall, a wall of indignation. "Do not touch her," he said, his voice a low growl. "Not one single step. I don't know what kind of monster you have become, but I know what is on that screen, and it is the truth. The truth about a son I don't recognize." The climax had arrived, and it was everything I had hoped for. Mark stood there, defeated, his lies exposed for all the world to see. His perfect life, his golden cage, was completely shattered. And in its wreckage, my daughter looked at me not with anger, but with a quiet, devastating gratitude. The truth, as I had always known, was the most powerful weapon of all. The storm had come, and it was a masterpiece of my own making. He had no idea what was coming, and now he was completely at my mercy.
The silence was deafening, the air thick with the dust of shattered lies. The perfect party was a complete wreck, a scene of emotional carnage. Mark stood frozen, a statue of a defeated man, his face a grotesque mask of shock and rage. His father was the first to act. He put a hand on my shoulder, a gesture of quiet support, and then turned to his son. The words he said were low and guttural, a voice filled with a kind of moral fury I had never heard before. "You are no longer my son. Get out of my house, now, before I call the police myself." Mark stood there for a moment, his eyes darting around the room, seeing not faces of friends and family, but of a jury that had already passed its judgment. He picked up his coat and walked out, a broken, defeated man, his empire of lies crumbling around him. Annie had been silent all this time, her eyes fixed on the screen, then on Mark, then on me. I saw the tears streaming down her face, not of sadness, but of a profound, devastating realization. Her world had just been torn apart, but the truth, as painful as it was, had set her free. She walked to me and, without a word, wrapped her arms around me. She did not ask me why I had done it. She did not need to. She knew. She knew that I had not done it to hurt her, but to save her. Later that night, after the last of the guests had left in a stunned, confused silence, Annie and I sat in the quiet of the living room, a cup of tea between us. The house felt different, a little emptier, but also a little lighter. The golden cage had been shattered, and its prisoner had been released. We talked for hours, about everything, about Mark, about the years of lies, about the woman on the yacht. And in the middle of our conversation, she took my hand. "Mom," she said, her voice small but firm. "Thank you for everything." I squeezed her hand, a lifetime of love and pride in that one simple gesture. "I would have done anything," I said, "anything to protect you. I am not a fighter, honey. I am a mother, and sometimes those two things are the same." The next day, Mark's story went viral. A few of the younger guests had recorded the scene, and it had been shared, retweeted, and commented on 1,000,000 times. It was a kind of public shaming that no amount of money could fix. His business partners had already cut ties with him, his reputation was in tatters, and he was a pariah, a man without a home, a business, or a future. He had thought he was a mastermind, but he had just learned that you do not mess with a family, and you certainly do not mess with a mother.
My phone buzzed with a message from Eleanor. "He's gone. Just a few clothes and his duffel bag. Do you want me to do anything else?" I smiled to myself, a true, genuine smile. "No, Ellie," I typed back. "It's over. The rest is just cleanup. He will be fine. He has everything he deserves." I looked out the window at the beautiful snow-capped mountains of Aspen, and for the first time in my life, I felt a deep, abiding peace. I had fought a war, and I had won. Not with guns or with words, but with a quiet, unwavering love for my daughter. I was a mother, a general, a protector, and I had saved my child. It was a victory more precious than any amount of money, more beautiful than any flower arrangement, more satisfying than any toast. And I knew, with a deep certainty, that I would sleep well tonight.